In this video, I'm going to talk about the discovery of the Woodford tax. The Woodford tax, if you recall, is named after the economist Michael Woodford, the first economist in history to win a MacArthur Foundation Award in, I believe, December 1981, when he was in his early 20s, and he was a PhD student in economics in the Department of Economics of MIT. The Woodford tax is an N as in Nancy percent global wealth tax with the out of nowhere, completely strange design feature that the taxed need only pay 1/3 the tax amount and over 3% a year if they pay the tax with bank loans. The institution, now the banks would earn two sets of fees from this loan activity. First, they would charge those to whom all wealth accumulates and has accumulated fees for providing the loans. Then the banks would package the loans into global wealth tax, amortizing collateralized loan obligation bonds, which would be risk-free bonds, essentially, since they're backed by the people with all the wealth, and they would get a second set of fees for the packaging. This would make the institution of the Woodford tax by 30 or 40 orders of magnitude the most lucrative event in the entire history of banking. Therefore, the bank lobby and the global banking industry would simply order up the institution of the Woodford tax. The Woodford tax, thus, would be avoidance impervious because we've made it 100 or 1,000 times more lucrative for the banks to make the global wealth tax loans and securitize them. It's 1,000 times more lucrative to do that than to hide the wealth of those to whom all wealth accumulates, and the banks would not let even a penny of due tax escape them because of the money they would make from it. And it would be, you would never be able to repeal the Woodford tax because the banks would never allow these political flunkies to deprive the banking industry of the extra $1.5 trillion a year in revenue that the Woodford tax would provide for the banking industry. But this video, again, is about how the Woodford tax was discovered. Why do I say it was discovered instead of saying I thought of it? It was discovered by accident, and this is how it happened. Years ago, my name is Scott Solomon. I'm the one who discovered the Woodford tax. I lived for 11 years with a woman who graduated second in her class from Columbia College. How do you do that? How do you graduate second in your class from Columbia College? First of all, it's very difficult to get into Columbia College, and it's unheard of to graduate second in your class from Columbia College. But the way you do that is typically, well, obviously you need to have something close to an A+ GPA over a 4.0, like a 4.15, 4.2, more than that even, GPA. 4.33 is A+. But that's not enough to get you second year class at Columbia College. It's also good if you double or triple major and that there's not a lot of overlap in your majors and that you do it quickly. So you do, say, 4 years as the woman I lived with for 11 years did 4 years and 3 years, and she double majored, and she had a 4.16 GPA. She then went on to Columbia Law School and now works at one of the world's most prestigious law firms. While she was at the law firm, she still is at the law firm, she had a client who's worth $18 billion. And this client, over the years, had gotten extremely aggressive with tax avoidance, as the super wealthy like to be. But this, unfortunately for him, the IRS, after many years, caught up with him And they said, well, you owe us $100 million in back taxes. So he had his assets allocated in a way that he liked at the time. And his asset allocation did not involve having over $100 million sitting around in cash. So what is a poor guy in this situation, a poor guy who's only worth $18 billion, what does he do in this situation? He calls up his $1,700 an hour lawyer and tells her to go get him some bank loans, low interest bank loans, so he can pay off the IRS, which she was able to do in a matter of a few days. The guy's worth $18 billion. And, I mean, he would not deign to go into banks himself and ask for the loans. He sends his $1,700 graduated second class from Columbia College lawyer to go do it. And she got him some low-interest bank loans, and he paid off his taxes. So that was it. That was the end of the story. Now, fast forward, Elizabeth Warren in 2019, is angling to be the she's angling to get the Democratic nomination, and she has economic advisors Gabriel Zuckman and Emmanuel Saez in the Department of Economics at Berkeley, and they managed to get enough influence to where Warren proposes a 2% a year wealth tax for the Americans, with a net assets over 50 million. And I'm looking at Twitter all the time, and I follow like 4,800 economists on Twitter, and in total I follow over 5,000 people on Twitter. And I see these right-wing tweets from people about the Warren's wealth tax, saying you can't have a wealth tax because then all these guys who have all the wealth will have to quote-unquote liquidate their assets to pay the puny little wealth tax. So then I just remembered the experience I had with my ex-girlfriend, and I would always reply, look, you know, a guy with net assets over $50 million, I mean, he probably has a million different ways to pay the wealth tax, but if push comes to shove, he has no problem getting if he has net assets over $50 million, he has absolutely no problem getting a low interest bank loan to pay his puny little wealth tax. But, you know, so I would see this again, some other right-wing guy goes, you can't have a wealth tax because these guys will have to liquidate their assets. And then I would just, again, respond always with the same thing. Okay, he can just get a loan. It's very easy to get a low-interest loan if you have net assets above $50 million. This happens like 16 times. And it's getting a little boring. But finally, on the 16th time, as I'm about to write this, to use a phrase from Apocalypse Now by Marlon Brando playing Colonel Kurtz, it hit me like a bullet made out of a diamond. Suddenly, it was like the apple falling off of the tree that hit Newton in the head. It was like, well, what if you designed the wealth tax so everybody paid with loans? You know, you make it an N as in Nancy percent. They only have to pay 1/3 the tax amount if they pay with loans. So then everybody pays with loans. And then you make it a global wealth tax, and it doesn't just impact people with net assets over $50 million. It impacts everyone in the world with net assets over $30 million. And in addition, corporations and foundations with net assets above some level that you would figure out. So then this would be from the fees, from the two fee streams, the fees the banks could charge to those with all the wealth for making the loans, and the securitization fees. I mean, you could literally you make it uniform. I mean, for the banks to be registered to make these global wealth tax loans, they have to standardize everything. So you could just the banks make any amount of money. It could be 1 trillion a year, or 1.5 trillion a year, or 2 trillion a year. Whatever gets them to, whatever gets them motivated to move to get the global wealth tax instituted. And since it's a global wealth tax, there would be nowhere to run. You can't, any country, any little island like Nevis or whatever that tries to go the other way of being a tax haven would just be completely cut off by the global banking system. So you can put your money in Nevis maybe, but what are you gonna do with it? I mean, you're not going to be able to move it anywhere because you're cut off from the global banking system. And also note, this would also be from the securitizations. It would be by many, many orders of magnitude the most lucrative event in the history of the rating agencies. So any country that tried to undermine the institution of the global wealth tax would just be downgraded. So that is the origin, that is the discovery of the Woodford tax. And I would say this tax design had to be discovered by accident. I can't imagine anyone systematically coming up with this idea.